won an old space box at auction. Inside were cryo-frozen alien girls. Jace never planned to buy anything at the auction. He was just there to pass time. He liked looking at broken machines, lost ship parts, or old tech thrown away by rich aliens. Most of the stuff was useless, but sometimes, very rarely, something special appeared. The auction was held inside a cold hangar on the edge of the Mars trade zone. The air smelled like rust and oil. A few alien traders and scavengers stood around, drinking cheap stim coffee and yawning. The auctioneer, a three-eyed alien with a crooked voice, called out, "Next item, unknown space container, unmarked, no. Owner ID found floating near a destroyed cargo fleet." A big metal box rolled forward on a hover lift. It was large, old, and covered in dust and faded alien symbols. Some parts were scratched and burnt, like it had been through fire. A few people laughed. "Probably empty," one alien said. "Maybe it's cursed," another joked. The auctioneer tapped the side of the box. No energy readings, no life signs, no ID chip. Probably scrap metal. Nobody bid. Jace looked at the box. His heart beat a little faster. He didn't know why, but something about it pulled him in. It was like the box was waiting for him. He raised his hand. 50 credits, he said. Everyone turned and stared at him. A few aliens chuckled. Even the auctioneer paused. Going once, going twice. Sold to the human, Jace paid, and a loading bot moved the box onto his small cargo skiff. One of the workers asked him, "You really bought that thing?" "What for?" Jace shrugged. Might be worth something inside, but even he didn't believe his own words. Back in his garage bay on Mars Outpost 17, Jace scanned the box. There were no weapons, no dangerous chemicals, no radiation, just old metal and strange tech from a forgotten age. It had a single control panel, hidden behind a rusted plate. He pried it open with a tool. Some wires sparked, then a soft humming started. A low beep echoed, lights flickered, and a slow hiss came from the box. Then it opened. Mist poured out like cold breath from a giant mouth. Inside the box were 7 smooth pods, each shaped like a coffin but made from crystal and metal. They glowed faintly blue. Jace stepped closer. His eyes widened. Inside each pod was a girl, not human. Their skin was different colors, light blue, pale green, soft purple. One had glowing markings on her arms. Another had silver hair floating in the cryo-liquid. All of them were still, sleeping, frozen in time. Jace backed away. What the hell did I just buy? He tried to close the box, but then one of the pods beeped. A red warning blinked. Cryo failure. Revival in progress. No, stop that. Jace pressed buttons on the panel, but nothing worked. The pod began to glow warmer. Ice melted around the girl inside. She twitched. Her fingers moved. Her eyes blinked open. She gasped for breath and sat up. Her silver eyes glowed in the dim light. She looked around quickly, saw Jace and froze. Jace raised his hands. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She said something in a fast, strange language. Her voice was shaking. She looked terrified. Her hand reached out, and her palm glowed with some kind of energy. Jace stepped back. "Whoa, calm down." She looked round again, then pointed to the other pods and shouted the same words several times. "Saven." Jace's wrist translator tried to decode it. The translation was slow, broken. One word stood out. Hunters. Jace's stomach dropped. He looked back at the other pods, still frozen, but maybe not for long. She leaned forward and tapped the side of the pod. A tiny screen lit up, showing a map. A red dot blinked. Jace understood what it meant. A tracking signal. Someone was coming. Suddenly, the box didn't feel like a treasure anymore. It felt like a target, and he was standing right in the middle of it. The alien girl grabbed his sleeve and said something else. Softer this time. The translator finally caught it. "Please, help us." Jace stared at her, then at the 6 sleeping girls. His mind was racing. He had just bought a box full of cryo-frozen alien girls royalty, maybe, or prisoners, or worse, and now something out there knew they were waking up. He had to choose, run, or protect them. Outside, high above the sky, a ship in stealth mode changed direction. It had found the signal, and it was coming fast. Jace stood frozen, the girl's glowing eyes locked onto his foot. She looked frightened, but also alert, like a soldier waking in the middle of a battlefield. Her body was trembling, yet her voice had power. She kept glancing at the other 6 pods, then back to the screen blinking red. He didn't understand all the symbols, but one thing was clear: the tracking signal had already been sent. Whatever this was, it wasn't some lost cargo. Someone had been looking for this box, and now that it was open, they were coming. He stepped away from the pod slowly, trying not to startle her. "Do you understand me?" he asked softly. The translator hummed and failed. She replied in sharp syllables, her voice rising in panic. She pointed to herself, then to the other pods, then to the ceiling, then to the screen again. Her silver eyes filled with urgency. Jace took a deep breath and did the one thing he knew how to do: follow his gut. He rushed to the garage control panel and slammed the lockdown button. The metal shutters screeched down over the doors and windows. The alien girl flinched at the sound. He turned back to her. "I don't know who you are, but I think you're in trouble," he muttered. The girl didn't reply. She was now crawling out of the pod, her movements shaky, weak. Cryo-sleep must have drained her strength. Still, her hand glowed faintly, ready to strike if she had to. Jace grabbed a thermal blanket from the shelf and tossed it to her. She stared at it for a second, then wrapped it around herself slowly. He moved toward the other pods, just as the second one began to hiss and pulse with light. "Damn it," he whispered. "I didn't even touch that one." A ripple of energy passed through the box, and a deep hum echoed through the walls. The second pod opened another girl. This one had violet skin, with gold speckles across her forehead. Her hair was braided tightly in loops, her body slim and long. She blinked at the light, then gasped awake. The first girl rushed to her, catching her as she fell forward, speaking to her softly. Jace stayed back, watching. They looked terrified, but also trained. He could see it in the way they moved. These weren't civilians. Then something hit the building. A sharp sound like metal, tapping metal, not a knock. A sensor ping.jace ran to the main screen. An unmarked vessel hovered just above the garage roof. No calls, no signals. Stealth mode, it had dropped out of warp directly over him. He swore, under his breath, and grabbed his old plasma cutter. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The girl sensed it too. The first one stood up straighter, holding her glowing hand forward, forming a weak energy shield in front of the second. A deep voice boomed through external speakers, distorted and in another language. The girls went stiff. The first one's eyes burned with fear and fury. She screamed something toward the ceiling in the same alien tongue. The translator picked up only one word again. "Slavers." Jace's blood ran cold. He looked back at the pods. 3 were now flashing. They were waking up, one by one, and they had nowhere to run. The box was a trap, but not for him. It had been a prison, and now the jailers had returned. He moved fast. He used the plasma cutter to slice open the wall panel to his hidden cargo chute. It was a tight crawl space that led to his underground shelter, built for smuggling gear. Not made for 7 people, but it would have to do. He turned to the girls. "Down there," he pointed. "Hide, now." The first girl looked at the second, then at the pod still opening. She shook her head. "No. Time." Jace shouted. "Go. I'll get the rest." She hesitated, then nodded. With great effort, she helped the second girl into the chute. The third pod hissed open. This girl had reddish skin and long silver lashes. She stumbled out, looking around. In a panic, the first girl pulled her close and spoke quickly. The reddish girl looked at Jace, confused but willing to follow. They vanished into the chute just as the first blast rocked the garage. The roof cracked. Fire rained down. A plasma charge had hit the upper structure. Jace covered his head and ran to the next pod. The fourth one had begun thawing. He didn't have time. "I'm sorry," he whispered, then slammed the emergency wake-up command. The system beeped and accelerated the cycle. The girl inside jolted, her chest rising sharply, her eyes wide and glowing blue. She screamed. Another blast shook the building. A piece of the roof fell near the box, sparking flames. Smoke poured in. Jace dragged the fourth girl toward the chute. She was weak, barely conscious, but she pointed toward the other pods. Later, Jace muttered, "I'll come back for them, I promise." He kicked the crate lid open and shoved her inside the tunnel. Then he sealed it shut. The moment he turned around, a shadow appeared in the smoke. Tall, armored, non-human, and it had seen him. Jace stood alone in the burning garage, the air thick with smoke and heat, pieces of metal crashing from above. He clutched the plasma cutter tightly, though he knew it was useless against the kind of enemy that just landed. The shadow stepped forward slowly through the haze, taller than any human. Its armor gleamed like black glass, and a red lens in its helmet scanned the room with slow precision. It wasn't in a hurry. It knew what it was here for, and it knew its prey couldn't run far. Jace didn't move. He held his breath and backed toward the far wall, trying to keep his steps light. Every motion echoed. The soldier, or whatever it was, looked half machine, half monster. A long rifle was attached to its back, but it hadn't drawn it yet. Instead, it raised its hand, and a tiny floating drone zipped out, glowing with a red light. It hovered above the cryopods, scanning one after the other. One pod was still closed, the other two were cracked from the pressure of the last explosion. A low warning beeped from the internal system. Cryo failure. Jace's eyes darted between the drone and the enemy soldier. He knew one thing he had: to get them all out, even if it killed him. Then, something unexpected happened. The floating drone moved toward the last closed podond, suddenly sparked, buzzed, and dropped to the floor like a crushed fly. Smoke curled up from its wreckage. The soldier's head turned sharply. He hadn't expected resistance. Behind the pods, the air shimmered, and a new figure emerged, one of the alien girls, but not one Jace had seen awake before. She had sharp, glowing marks over her face and silver eyes that gleamed with anger. Her body was shaking from the effects of the thaw, but her hand crackled with a strange kind of lightning. She didn't speak. She attacked. The energy blast hit the armored figure in the chest, throwing it backward into the wall. The shockwave shattered a few garage windows, sending sparks flying. Jace ducked, stunned. The girl collapsed forward, after the blast, barely catching herself. Jace ran to her side. "You didn't have to do that. You're not even fully awake." She grabbed his wrist, her voice weak but firm. He was marked Slaver Class, Omega. Jace blinked, trying to understand. She coughed again, holding her side. Her skin was still too cold. Her body hadn't finished warming up from the cryo. She needed heat, fast. "I've got a safe place," he said, "but I can't carry you and fight at the same time." The girl said nothing, just looked up at him with determined eyes, and nodded once. He heard metal creaking above. The enemy wasn't down, just delayed. Jace didn't hesitate. He lifted her over his shoulder and made a run for the smuggler's chute. He slammed his boot on the release, and the floor panel popped open again. The moment he dropped down into the tunnel, he heard the cryo box explode behind him. The last two pods were gone. The crawl space was tight, dark, and hot. The alien girl barely fit on his back, and her breath was shallow. He could feel her pulse through her thin skin. Too slow. She was fading. Finally, he reached the lower chamber. Hidden basement bunker lined with salvaged parts, blankets, water tanks, and emergency food. The other 3 girls were already there. The first one, the silver-eyed leader, rushed forward as soon as she saw him. "Did you get her?" she asked through broken translation. Jace laid the girl down gently, just barely. The leader touched the injured girl's face, whispered something, and placed both hands over her chest. A soft glow formed between them, some kind of energy transfer. Jace stepped back, watching in awe. "She is Sister of Soul," the leader said, struggling with words. "Her name is Zira. She is last royal guard of us." Jace swallowed hard. "Then we can't lose her?" He turned toward the other 2 girls, who were huddled in the corner. They looked young, scared. One of them still wore frost on her hair. The second, the red-skinned one, had begun to cry quietly. Jace crouched down. "I know this is a lot, but we're not safe yet. That thing up there, it won't stop." The silver-eyed leader looked at him. "You help us? Why?" He didn't answer at first. He just looked at the broken heating unit in the corner and started pulling off parts from his own chest armor to repair it. "Because no one helped me either," he finally said, "and I'm tired of watching people freeze to death while others just walk away." He worked fast, hands trembling with the pressure. Outside, another explosion rocked the garage above. The enemy wasn't leaving. It was calling for more. Jace looked up through the metal ceiling. "If you girls are royalty like you say, then we're not dealing with just any slavers, are we?" The leader didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the injured girl, then at the others, then back at him. "They will bring war to take us," she whispered, "and now they know your face." The ground above them shook again, a low rumble like thunder rolling through steel and dirt. Dust trickled from the ceiling. Jace didn't flinch this time. He had already accepted it, whoever those things were. They weren't just slavers. They were organized, armed, and willing to burn down half a colony just to retrieve the girls now hiding in his underground shelter. The heating unit crackled to life with a weak hum. Not much, but enough to take the edge off the cold. Zira, the girl who had blasted the drone, was breathing easier now, though her skin still looked too pale. The silver-eyed leader, whose name Jace finally understood, was a Lansat beside her, one hand resting protectively on Zira's arm. The others sat close, silent, their eyes flicking upward every time the ceiling creaked. Jace leaned against the wall, wiping sweat from his forehead. "This isn't gonna hold," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "They'll burn straight through the garage floor, eventually." Aelin looked at him. "You have ship?" Jace hesitated. "Not really," he said. "I've got half a junker upstairs with a busted nav system and 2 working thrusters barely. Took it apart for parts." Alan stood slowly, her knees still weak, but her voice calm. "Fix it. We fight if needed, but we run first." "Run to where?" She didn't answer right away. Then she spoke 2 words softly. "Refuge Star." Jace frowned. "What's that?" Aelin reached into the small satchel she'd carried inside her pod and pulled out a crystal shard. It flickered with blue and gold light, like a living map. "Safe world. Hidden. Our last chance." Jace took the shard and watched as the stars shifted inside it. The coordinates were encrypted, but the direction was clear. Far beyond human space. No known routes. No refuel stations. A ghost path through systems not on any current chart. "You'll never make it," he said. "That's deep out soon. You don't even have a ship." "You do," she replied, her voice calm but firm. He laughed dryly. "I've got a pile of scrap with rusted hopes." Ellen stepped closer. "You have hands. And will. That is enough." Jace stared at her. She wasn't begging. She wasn't afraid. She was trusting him, like he mattered. No one had looked at him like that in years. He stood up then. "I guess I better start welding." He left the girls in the bunker and climbed through the narrow escape tunnel that led back into the garage. The fire had burned out. What remained was smoke, twisted steel, and a hole in the roof big enough to drop a tank through. His tools were still intact, buried under a collapsed shelf. He dug them out, then turned toward his ship. The Rust Hound was an old patrol craft, meant for two. Now it was gutted, stripped for spare parts, the hull patched with 3 types of metal and a tarp. Jace looked at it like a mechanic might look at a dead horse. "All right, girl," he muttered. "Let's see if we can wake you up." He worked non-stop for hours, reconnected the broken fuel lines, swapped out a dead coil, used scrap from the destroyed roof to reinforce the underbelly, all while the sky above remained quiet, too quiet. At one point, he climbed onto the roof to check the horizon. That's when he saw a black dot on the edge of the red sky. Getting closer. Not fast, not loud, but steady. He counted 2 more ships behind it. They weren't sending a squad this time. They were sending a fleet. Back underground, the heating unit gave a warm hum, and the girls huddled closer together. Zero was awake now, whispering something to the youngest girl, Raleigh, the soft-skinned one who barely spoke. Ellen paced the chamber slowly, thinking, planning. She knew they wouldn't be safe here much longer. Jace had risked his life already, but what came next would demand more. When he returned covered in soot and grease, Aelin looked up. "How long?" "Maybe 6 hours, if I don't sleep," he said, tossing down a broken power cell. "That is ... if no more pieces fall from the sky." "Too long," she said quietly. "They will breach sooner." Jace nodded. "Then we fight just long enough to launch." She reached out and touched his arm, gently. "You are human. Why help us?" He looked at her, eyes tired. "I didn't help because I'm human. I helped because I saw people locked in cages." That was enough. Elaine stared at him for a long time, then whispered something in her language. The translator didn't catch it. Above them, the sky rumbled again. The hunters were almost here. The stars above Mars Outpost 17 dimmed as 3 enemy ships descended silently through the atmosphere. Black as space itself. No warning signals. No planetary clearance. No mercy. They hovered like vultures above the ruined garage, scanning for any sign of heat, movement, or sound. Inside the cracked remains of Jace's workshop, the Rust Hound roared to life for the first time in years, its engines trembling, its panels shaking, but it worked, barely, below. In the cramped bunker, the air had grown warmer, but the tension was ice cold. Aelin sat with her sisters in silence. Zira's strength had returned just enough for her to sit upright, though she still winced with every movement. Raleigh gripped her hand tightly, trying to be brave. The other 2 alien girls, Tia and Vel, kept watch near the access tunnel, their glowing eyes fixed on the steel hatch above, waiting for it to open. They all heard the soft humming of the ship powering up. It gave them hope, but also fear. Jace stood above in the garage, covered in burns, grease, and dried blood from a minor engine flare. He didn't care. The nav system was half functioning, the shields at 40%, and one of the plasma thrusters leaked coolant, but it could fly, he hoped. He leaned against the side of the Rust Hound, looking out through a cracked viewport. In the distance, the black enemy ships had landed. Tall shadowed figures moved out, dozens of them, armored, armed, marching in silence like a wave of death. No banners, no flags, only their target, the crate, the garage, the hidden cryo girls that no one else dared protect. The slavers had come to collect their property, but Jace had already decided they'd leave with nothing. He opened the chute and shouted down, "Get ready. We're leaving now." The girls scrambled to their feet. Ellen helped Zero up, while the others gathered the little they had: blankets, ration packs, the glowing shard with the star map. One by one, they climbed the ladder into the smoky remains of the garage. As they emerged into the chaos above, they saw it for the first time, Jace's half-destroyed patchwork shipped out to them. It looked like a lifeline. Jace opened the side ramp, "We don't have time for pretty," he said. "This thing's got maybe one good jump left. After that, we're flying on hope." Alan nodded. "Hope is enough." Taya and Vel rushed inside first, helping Raleigh into one of the crash seats. Jace carried Zira up the ramp as gunfire echoed in the far distance, plasma shots lighting up the red sky. "They found the entrance tunnel," Jace said through gritted teeth. "We've got maybe 3 minutes before they hit us directly." He ran back to the console, punched a few commands, and the main thrusters began to heat up. A warning blinked on the screen. Low stability. He ignored it. Suddenly, Aelin stood beside him. "We fight with you," she said. "You don't have to," Jace replied. "I know," she said, placing one hand gently on his shoulder. "But you gave us something no one else did. Freedom." Just then, an explosion outside rocked the ship, shaking the floor. A blast wave shattered one of the garage walls. Dust poured in. The enemy was close. Jace ran to the ship's cannon controls. "I installed one working turret. Not great, but it might delay them long enough." Vel climbed into the co-pilot seat beside him. "Show me," Jace blinked. "You know ship weapons." Vel smirked. "My father trained me before he sold me." Jace didn't ask more. He just nodded. The slavers moved fast, too fast. 3 breached the outer doors, rifles up, scanners hot. But before they could take a step, the Rust Hound's turret fired. A single plasma shot blasted the first into the wall. The others scattered, taking cover behind the remaining cryopod wreckage. Vel kept shooting. The turret hissed from the stress. Jace watched the engine heat climb dangerously close to critical. "We jump now, or we burn," he said. "Then we jump," Ellen replied. Zero crawled to the back and whispered into the shard. The map pulsed blue, transmitting coordinates. The ship's system didn't recognize the star chart, but Jace didn't care. He hit the launch sequence. The garage collapsed behind them as the Rust Hound blasted upward. Engines screaming, fire bursting. From beneath, the slavers opened fire from the ground, but the ship shot past the atmosphere like a streak of light. Inside, the girls gripped their seats, holding on to each other. Jace pulled the lever, space folded, reality twisted, and the stars vanished into a flash of blue. They were gone. For now, the jump wasn't clean. Space didn't welcome them gently. The Rust Hound screamed as it tore through unstable warp currents, its old frame shaking like it might rip apart at any moment. Inside, sparks burst from a side panel. One of the rear lights flickered and died. A coolant alarm wailed briefly, then shut itself off, probably broken. The ship groaned like it was alive and dying. Jace gripped the flight stick with white knuckles. He had made thousands of jumps in his life, some smooth, some messy, but never one with 6 passengers he barely knew, and a star chart written in an alien language. The nav system kept flashing "unknown route" in bold red letters. He ignored it. There was no going back anyway. Aelin sat behind him, one hand pressed against the glowing shard embedded into the control panel. She kept whispering to it, softly, guiding the ship. Every time she spoke, the system recalculated tiny shifts, course corrections, stabilizing pulses. Jace didn't understand how, but she was syncing with the ship in real time. She was their only map now. In the back cabin, the girls stayed quiet. Raleigh held Zira's hand tightly, while Taya worked on patching a coolant leak using spare tubing and a roll of thermal tape. Vel, silent and alert, watched the rear monitors in case anyone had followed. So far, the scanners showed empty space. But empty didn't always mean safe. The ship jolted again. Jace cursed under his breath. "We're falling out of warp too early," he said. "The nav core's overheating." Ellen looked at him. "One more shift, then arrival." Jace nodded. He pushed the engines harder, and the ship surged forward. The final jump lasted seconds, but it felt like hours. Then, with a loud snap, they exited warp. Silence. The stars reappeared, calm, cold, beautiful. Before them floated a planet green and gold, wrapped in clouds, orbiting a pale blue sun. No satellites, no ships, no defense grid, nothing. Jace blinked. Is that it? Aelin smiled softly. Refuge. They approached carefully. As they descended into the atmosphere, soft wind currents buffeted the ship. No signs of life, no cities, just wild terrain, forests glowing with soft trees, rivers that shimmered with light, and strange creatures soaring in the sky. Jace couldn't believe his eyes. This place, it's untouched. Aelin nodded, hidden from maps. Protected by our ancestors, the ship landed in a wide field near the edge of a luminous lake. Steam hissed from the sides as the thrusters powered down. For the first time in days, the rust hound went quiet. They all stepped out together. The air was warm, sweet. The ground was soft under their boots and bare feet. Raleigh laughed softly, the first time any of them had heard joy in her voice. Zero sat down under a glowing tree, exhausted but alive. Jace stood still, looking up at the sky. The clouds parted slowly, revealing twin moons rising in the distance. He took a deep breath. The fight had ended. For now. Then Aelin stepped beside him and said something unexpected. You saved us, she said. But you also changed fate. He looked at her, confused. What do you mean? She held up the shard, which now glowed with a soft white light. This place was meant to be our hiding ground, but your presence has awakened it. The ground beneath them pulsed faintly just once. Not violent, not threatening. More like a heartbeat. Jace took a step back. What is this place really? Aelin's expression changed. Calm, but solemn. Long ago, our kind created this world as a sanctuary, a failsafe. Only those with pure intent could find it. But it was never meant to stay asleep forever. He raised an eyebrow. And now? She turned to him fully, eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. Now it's yours too. Night fell gently over the refuge world, casting silver reflections across the glowing lake and two pale moons above. The stars blinked quietly, as if watching. The girls had built a small camp near the rust hound, using scraps and survival kits. Jace had stored for years, but never needed until now. Jace sat alone by the fire they'd made using the strange dry vines growing nearby. He stared into the flames, but his mind was racing. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He fixed machines, welded metal, and sold junk to survive. Yet now here he was sitting beside 6 alien girls, who once slept in cryopods like forgotten treasures. Girls who were hunted, royal, gifted, and now alive because of him. His hands were rough, burned, tired, but not shaking. Not anymore. Aelin approached quietly, her bare feet barely making a sound on the soft earth. She sat beside him, wrapping her long cloak tighter against the breeze. For a while, they said nothing. The crackling fire spoke enough. Finally, she broke the silence. The planet speaks to you. Jace looked at her, puzzled. What? She didn't smile. It watches. It remembers. When you touched the shard, the path opened. But not just for us. Jace didn't answer. He'd felt it too, though he didn't understand it. That moment in the cockpit when she guided the ship and his hands were on the controls, it felt like something else had joined them. Something ancient, awake. They'll come again, won't they? He asked. Aelin nodded slowly. The slavers won't stop. Not until they know where we've gone. And if they learn, Jace clenched his jaw, then we don't let them find it. She turned to him, studying his face. You say that like a soldier. He chuckled, dry and short. I'm not. But I've learned something. You don't need to be a soldier to fight. You just need something worth protecting. Aelin looked at the others across the camp. Zero was training Raleigh how to focus her energy glow on small rocks, giggling every time one of them sparked. Vel and Taya were carving makeshift tools from bone-like branches. All of them once frozen in silence, now living, This is our chance to rebuild, Aelin whispered, to live free, not as fugitives, but as a new beginning. Jace nodded. Then let's do it right. He stood and walked toward the rust hound. Its hull was dented, burned, and missing 2 panels, but it was home now. He knelt beside it and opened the belly compartment. Inside were parts, wires, and something he'd held onto for years, a forgotten signal beacon. He pulled it out and turned it over in his hand. Planning to call someone? Elaine asked, walking behind him. Yeah, Jace said, but not who you think. He connected the beacon to the ship's power and reprogrammed its frequency. It wouldn't send coordinates, only a message. To anyone still listening, this is Jace. Mick. If you're out there running, hunted, or just forgotten, there's a place for you now. Follow the stars. Trust the signal. Come home. The beacon lit up with a low, steady pulse. He set it down in the field, pointing skyward. Ellen looked at him again. This time, she smiled. Truly smiled. You just made yourself a leader, Jace shrugged. Nah, I'm just a mechanic with good aim and bad luck. No, she said softly. You're something rarer. You're human. And somewhere, far across space, deep in the silence between stars, someone heard the call. A flicker on an old receiver. A message of hope. And they turned toward it.